The world's a very scary place, especially now, and I thought today would be a nice day to kind of talk about something different, something that I'm trying to get into on this channel, and something that I have a huge passion for. Now, just to give you a tiny backstory, before my dad passed away of cancer a couple years ago, one of the games that we played together the most was Fallout New Vegas, and there's a reason for that. Fallout New Vegas has some of the best writing hands down in a video game. You know, I put it up there with games that people talk about, Planescape Torment, Knights of the Old Republic 2. The proposition of a sequel to Fallout New Vegas is something scary but really exciting to me. It is probably my favorite video game of all time. There are many people who contributed to that, and we're going to talk about them today too, but that leads us to the news from a Giantbomb show, Grubb Snacks, and this was where VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb actually talked about a possibility for a sequel to Fallout New Vegas. Now, this is something that I do want to say has been kind of brought up for a long time. There's been Obsidian interest in a Fallout New Vegas follow-up forever. Actually, back in 2013, Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart, I really hope I said his name right, I'm sorry if I didn't, but you'll never watch my tiny channel. He had actually talked about creating a sequel to New Vegas at that time, and he had talked about basically what they wanted to do. He said, "Oh, we'd love to do Fallout New Vegas 2. It would be awesome. I think of going from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2. We tried to associate the two areas somewhat closely. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to do this 2,000 miles from here. So I think if we were to do Fallout New Vegas 2 or just a new Fallout, we would probably separate it from what the internal team at Bethesda is doing." I have some sources for this as well, including Video Games Chronicle and some other ones that I will link in the description down below. But one thing that's worth mentioning is that Microsoft did actually get Obsidian in 2018, and now they actually own Bethesda as well. So Microsoft essentially owns everybody involved with Fallout at this point. And Jeff Grubb did point out in his own, way, without confirming it, because this is behind the scenes insider information and it's early talks, that this is very early, but people have begun to have talks and say these words in sentences, and those words are Obsidian and New Vegas 2. We're talking years and years away. There's at least an interest and conversations happening about making something like that actually a reality. For me personally, now I'm talking about, me, Jay, this is something that I would love to see. Grubb did add that a lot of people at Microsoft think this could work, and there's a lot of interest to make it happen. Here's the thing that worries me about it. Here's my thoughts on it and some more information, because I'm a weirdo who keeps my eyes out for stuff like this, even on social media. It's one of the few reasons I stay in the hellhole that is Twitter, is to see what certain people are saying. And I will say this. Now, Jeff Grubb is obviously an industry veteran in terms of knowing things, okay? In terms of getting information, in terms of talking to people, the gaming press. He is one of those people that, like Jason Schreier, whether you love or hate him or love to hate him or don't even know who he is, he's one of those people who does have contacts, who does talk to people, and does actually do their due diligence and research. Hopefully he can speak better than I can. But, one of the things with this that kind of worries me is a whole situation that happened last year in 2021 that I'm going to talk about very briefly and offer my opinion on, that no one asked for. And that's Chris Avellone. Now, Chris Avellone is, I think, one of the best writers in gaming. He did some of the best writing I've ever seen. Literally, I looked through some of my favorite games, and at least two of them are partially they were made partially by Chris Avellone in the writing department. Those are Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, which I think is one of the best looks at the Star Wars universe, gray morality, the light side versus the dark, and justifications for each, all that stuff. And also Fallout New Vegas, which again has some of the same stuff. The idea that maybe one person isn't in the right. Now, obviously, in Fallout New Vegas, we know Caesar's Legion is pretty much in the wrong, but there are even things offered in the writing that actually support Caesar's Legion. Things like the fact that raiding and tribalism are basically gone in the Legion areas of the Midwest, So they were able to create a world that felt alive, where there were evil people and there were better people that were trying to be good, but it wasn't exactly like a moral paragon where you had a Superman versus a Darkseid. Not insulting that, just saying it wasn't written that way. It was written in a way where everybody felt like they had problems and there were issues with the world that needed solving, and there were a lot of people trying to use you to get their ends, and you use people to get your ends as well. It was written very three-dimensionally for Fallout New Vegas in a way that really clicked with players, especially Fallout fans. You know, I love all the Fallout games. I even have fun on Fallout 76. I've said it before. I know some people are going to gasp and be in awe at that. I think that game has improved. In trying to make more content for this series, because I love it, I've been going back and playing some of these games, and New Vegas is so special for the reasons I said. You know, it's one of those games, like I said, I have a personal connection to. I played it all the time with my dad. We played through multiple different playthroughs. I've played hundreds of hours of it on console, and I've played probably close to the same amount on PC. I'd have to check my Steam. So it's one of those things that I'm worried about, though, with a follow-up because of the writing department. Last year, in 2021, Chris Avellone was Me Too'd or faced sexual allegations against some people, one of them who had previously dated him, to my understanding, and one of them who he said he had never met. My thing with the Chris Avellone situation, which I know will piss somebody off, that's fine. There's the door if you really get mad at that. I believe him in his claim that these were false allegations. First off, this man had years and years and years and years in the gaming industry and in the world with no kind of reported behavior like that ever, at all, not once. Now, I'm not saying that makes it so it's impossible, but I'm just saying this man had a track record of good behavior, of being an amazing writer, of being a personable person who had friends, who was sociable, and who did live his life relatively peacefully. Now, with this dude, though, the problem that I have is that he was one of the hearts and souls behind Fallout New Vegas, and he is no longer at Obsidian. You know, part of this also has to do with working freelance. Part of it has to do with just people distancing themselves from him in the gaming industry. You know, there were a lot of different developers that distanced themselves from him immediately when these claims came out. And not because there was any proof. Actually, Chris even filed a libel case against the people who actually gave this alleged proof or gave these allegations out and started spewing them all over Twitter, which, by the way, personal tangent, I think really if your claims have so little proof backing them up that you have to go to social media to make them, I know maybe it's a little hypocritical because I make my living off of social media if you count YouTube, but if that's where you go instead of like the police and stuff, I personally, am already skeptical of that because I had a friend in college whose life was almost ruined by a false allegation. His girlfriend cheated on him, and then he broke up with her, and then she claimed that he assaulted her. That was just point blank what happened. He had proof. He got a restraining order. The police agreed with him. The campus eventually agreed with him, but he was almost kicked out of college over the allegation alone. There was very little done to actually research that and look into it. The thought process from the college was essentially, oh crap, let's not get dragged into the press. Get rid of this guy. This is something we see all the time in the world. It's happened to Johnny Depp as well. And because of that and where Chris Avellone is now, I'm not trying to, drag this man's name into it and be like, oh, go talk to him. Please leave him alone, first off. Please just do. But because of where he is now and considering that he contributed so much to these games, that makes me a little worried about a follow-up. How are you going to follow it up without one of the hearts that made it what it was? And also on top of that, I just wonder, this whole game was very, very definitive in its ending. Like, yes, things could go different ways, but the yes man, the independent route, the Caesar route, the NCR route, the Robert House route, those things are pretty solid in what they would do to the Mojave in this region for at least a while. So I guess my question kind of becomes, are we jumping ahead 100 years? What are we doing with that? And then you also have the fact that if the Courier sided with House or Yes Man, he could have access to life-preserving technology that could have kept him alive, him or her, for hundreds of years. So you have these issues of the decisions you made in the first game. How do they get followed up? I guess that's kind of my worry with basically my favorite game ever, is it's one of those things where it's kind of like Blade Runner. Now, Blade Runner 2049 came out and it absolutely blew me away. This is possible, okay? But it's also very, very possible to drop the ball, to bring something back that maybe shouldn't have been brought back. So I'm worried about that. I do want to say that I do follow Chris Avallone on Twitter. I don't know the guy at all. Again, please leave him alone. And I'm not going to be like Twitter stalking and saying everything he has said. But I do follow him on Twitter, and he did actually point out that he doesn't have any information about it because essentially of what happened. He talked about this as well. I can show some, I guess, a couple of screenshots for this. But he did talk about when asked, would you work on it? If asked, he did say, I won't get asked. Even if an additional mountain of evidence is presented against 2020's allegations, there will always be key people who will never believe the evidence staring them in the face. And that's why false allegations are so damaging. Welcome to the world. Again, that's something we've seen with Johnny Depp. He did also talk about, in answering some of these people, which, by the way, TKS Mantis actually talked to him. He's somebody who is not a friend of mine, but was very nice to me on Twitter the other day when I went for my CT scan for cancer screening and stuff. He actually had asked essentially if Xbox or Microsoft would override the decision if Bethesda didn't want them to do it. And Chris talked about this and said that doesn't feel like Phil Spencer's way. And my understanding from what I've heard is he's being generous about letting acquired studios make their own calls and creative decisions instead of basically generate cash now, you fuckers. Essentially, Chris Avallone, who worked on it directly, doesn't know anything about it, is not going to be involved, at least to my understanding, and also would not be asked to be brought back, and did confirm that there was interest in Fallout New Vegas too, all the way back. We saw this in 2013, but Chris also said the other day that it's a good idea, but Bethesda never wanted to pursue it after New Vegas 1. So this was something that had been talked about, at least at some point, but Bethesda never actually asked them back. I really have my own opinions on that as well. I do think that part of that is that Bethesda's an interesting company. I love their games a lot of the times. I love them as a slate, especially, for modding and other stuff. I think they're fantastic. And Fallout 3 and 4 even, they're for me. I know they're not for everybody, but I still really, really connect with them. I do think it was a bit of a slam dunk on Bethesda from Obsidian, who they contracted to make Fallout New Vegas, that essentially they were able to follow up the vibe of Fallout 1 and 2 so well, with Fallout 3's gameplay improved even some more, and writing factions that felt more three-dimensional than the factions in Fallout 3, okay? Even when Fallout 4 came out, it was still being compared to Fallout New Vegas, being compared to the intricate world design, the combat, VATS being honestly a lot better and more interesting, the role-playing elements, the karma elements that were now gone in Fallout 4. Those things have been dissected and compared viciously to New Vegas over the years. And Bethesda's not stupid, okay? Bethesda doesn't get to where they got by being a bunch of dumbasses. They hear that. They know that people didn't connect with some of this stuff. And I really do believe, just me reading into it, that it did not rub them the right way, that were essentially Bethesda, who acquired the rights to Fallout, then went back and got Obsidian, who obviously is closely tied to ZeniMax, who had been working on Fallout forever, Interplay and all that stuff in the past. They got them to come back and essentially create a spiritual successor to Fallout 2, which pushed the story forward over on the West Coast, did really well, and has gotten critical and fan acclaim forever, right? People are still modding that game and comparing all of the modern Bethesda Fallouts to it. I don't think that rubbed Bethesda the right way. I don't think that they personally liked that, and I don't think that they wanted to be associated with that, I guess. I think that's why they kind of never showed an interest in this after that. I think otherwise it would have been very easy to license out the Fallout 4 engine, especially, again, and get them to make another Fallout game, but they just never did. So this is one of those things that I really, really hope is true if handled well, if there are good writers still on it. Chris Avallone was not the only amazing writer to make Fallout New Vegas happen. But what I'm saying is he was one of them, okay? There was a recipe to getting that game right, and one ingredient to the recipe was Chris. So with all of that said, if you can do it, If you can provide a continuation that doesn't ruin the ending or the impact of Fallout New Vegas, if you can create a continuation with good writing, that actually draws players in, a really interesting world with all of these fantastic characters to interact with, I would love to see it. A sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, this is incredible if this happens, but only if it's handled right. I don't want all kinds of microtransaction crap. I don't want things, gouged out of the game to be put on the Creation Club. I don't want all these glitches and for them to excuse it away. It made sense with New Vegas because essentially Bethesda rushed Obsidian, then got mad at them when they had bugs and stuff at the end and treated them poorly on it and didn't even give them their bonus. But I want to see it if handled right. If they can't do that, I don't want to see it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. This is a very complicated story. There's a lot more layers to it just than Jeff Grubb said it's possible. There has been interest forever, off and on. Some people who were involved previously are not involved anymore or will not be asked back. And also there is the issue of Fallout's gameplay changing, There is a big change between Fallout New Vegas and 3 and 4 and moving more towards action shooter. So, I don't know. I don't know what to think. If they can do it well, please do it. If they can't, just leave it alone. Let me know anything in the comments down below. Always interested. Be sure to check out the description with all of our stuff down there. I appreciate you very, very much. We also do have a secondary channel, Degenerate Plays, where we play through a ton of games, hanging out with you and having a fun time. So I hope to see you there. Have a fantastic day, everyone. And as always, stay shway and subscribe for more content. I'm going to be talking more about Fallout. We're not like a Fallout channel, but it's one of those things I'll be coming back to as always.